Okay, gotta confess something. I'm a sucker for a brand new planner. Every January, I'm like, this is it. This is the year I conquer time management. Hmm. But then, life happens.
Uh-huh.
Soccer practice, deadlines, groceries. That planner ends up buried. I know I'm not alone here.
You're definitely not
Yep.
alone,
Yeah.
especially not for women. It's like we're constantly told, do more, be more, achieve more.
Hmm. No wonder we're all feeling overwhelmed, right?
And it's not just a feeling, it's a whole industry. The global productivity thing, apps, books, systems,
Yeah.
is projected to hit almost $80 billion in 2024. It's like our stress is their profit margin. So in this deep dive, we're looking at something different. Kendra Adachi's The Plan.
Yeah.
Manage your time like a lazy
Yeah.
genius. Even the title is kind of genius, right?
Yeah.
Lazy anti-genius.
Right. It definitely grabs your attention.
How do those even go together?
That's Adachi's whole point, I think.
Right.
The usual way we think about productivity, like it's all about optimizing and being super efficient. It's setting us up for failure, especially women. It's built on this idea of greatness that can be, well, kind of harmful. I'm already nodding along here. I've tried those productivity hacks and it's just, they don't fit. Like trying to squeeze into jeans 2 sizes too small.
Exactly. It's just not a good fit for how most of our lives actually work. And that's where Adachi's alternative comes in, this idea of integration.
Integration, okay. Sounds kind of buzzwordy, but I'm open to it. So how is that different from just trying to balance everything?
Good question. Balancing makes me think of like spinning plates, keeping all the parts separate. Integration is more about weaving it all together. It's got to be authentic, sustainable, acknowledging all the parts of your work, parenting, creative stuff, and honoring them all.
Weaving, not spinning. I like that a lot. Feels more intentional, less chaotic. But how do we actually do that? How do we weave it all together?
That's where the plan framework comes in. It's not a bunch of strict rules, but it's structured like a pyramid to guide you.
A pyramid. Okay, I'm visualizing. What's at the bottom, the foundation of this pyramid?
The most important part, the foundation, it's what matters most. Adachi really emphasizes figuring out your core values, what's truly important, and it's for this season of your life right now. Because, let's face it, what matters at 25 is going to be different at 45.
Absolutely. We're always changing, so our priorities have got to change too. And what about the rest of the pyramid, those other sides?
Okay, so you've got prepare, adjust, and notice. Each of those supports that foundation of what matters most. And then, right at the top, the point of the pyramid, it's simply to live. Not to conquer, not to be the best, but to live in a way that means something, aligns with your values.
Wow, that's already lifting a weight off my shoulders.
Yeah.
The goal isn't to be some productivity robot, but to just live well. That's refreshing. So let's start unpacking this plan framework, starting with prepare. What does Adachi say about preparation?
She actually starts with something kind of surprising, accepting we can't control the future. Not about giving up or anything, but acknowledging that life is unpredictable, right?
I can see how that would be freeing. So much time management stress is from trying to micromanage every detail and then feeling like a failure when things go off track, which they always do.
Exactly. It's a recipe for stress. So Achi says go in the right order. 1, figure out what really matters. 2, calm the crazy, those anxieties that make us control freaks. And finally, trust yourself. You can handle the unknowns.
She's got this great story about getting ready for a family reunion. Those can be stressful. And she thought it was all about logistics, the planning part. But really, it was the dread of those potentially awkward conversations, the family drama.
Such a good example of how we try to control the wrong things. By figuring out the real source of anxiety, she could address it head on, not get lost in over-planning the trip.
Oh, I've totally been there, spending hours on the perfect itinerary when the real stress was about something else entirely, like avoiding the real problem by getting lost in the details. So, how does this translate into something our listeners can use?
The big takeaway. A plan is an intention, not a pass-fail test. Let go of perfectionism. Life rarely goes exactly as planned, and that's okay.
That's a big one for me. I'm so used to beating myself up when things don't go perfectly.
Adachi also has this great concept, making your season smaller. Focus on NW this season of your life, not trying to map out the next 5 years.
Okay, I like that. But how do we actually make our seasons smaller, practically speaking?
Start by figuring out a time frame that feels manageable right now, this week, this month, this season of the year, whatever works. Then, within that time frame, what really matters. Don't get overwhelmed by all of the time. Just focus on what you can actually do, experience in this smaller chunk.
So instead of freaking out about the next 5 years, I can focus on what I want to do this fall, like organizing those photos I've been putting off or finally learning that new skill.
Exactly. Break it down. Make it doable within your current season. And remember, seasons change. What matters now might change as you move into a new one.
This is so much more approachable than those rigid productivity systems, you know? Ditch the guilt, embrace flexibility. I'm into it. Okay, so we've covered prepare. Now, what about the next part of the plan framework, live? I'm really curious about how Adachi approaches this idea of actually being present, in this crazy busy world.
So we're diving back into the plan. Manage your time like a lazy genius.
Yeah.
It's all about integrating those different parts of our lives, not chasing some impossible greatness.
Yeah, and we just finished talking about prepare, which who knew starts with accepting we can't control everything. But now I'm really interested in this live part. How do we actually get out of that doing mode and into being mode, especially in this always-on culture?
That's a good one, right? Live is about this radical idea, embracing contentment, not trying to constantly optimize every little thing.
You know what? The pandemic kind of forced a lot of us to confront that, didn't it? All those carefully made plans just poof, gone. We had to find ways to be present, even with all the uncertainty.
It was like a master class in making your season smaller for all of us. And yeah, it was tough, no doubt. But we also learned a lot about being present, embracing the moment.
I remember that feeling at the beginning, trying to keep up the same routines, the same productivity as before the pandemic. It was exhausting, just not sustainable. I had to let go of those expectations and find joy in the smaller things. Family walks, trying new recipes, that kind of stuff.
And that's exactly what Adachi's getting at. Don't judge every day against your best day, right? Life has these natural ebbs and flows. Some days are high energy, you get a ton done. Other days, you need rest, you need to reflect.
Giving ourselves permission to be human, not superhuman.
I like that. And that ties into contentment, another big part of live. It's about being okay with where you are, not always chasing the next goal.
Contentment, that's a tough one for me. It's like I'm programmed to think happiness comes from the next achievement. Promotion, bigger house, whatever that societal carrot is. How do we even start to break free from that?
Adachi says it beautifully. Contentment is the antidote to optimization. Instead of constantly trying to improve, upgrade, what if we just appreciated what we already have?
That's a total mind shift, right? Not about settling, but shifting focus from what's missing to what's already good.
Exactly. Doesn't mean we can't have goals or ambitions, but it's about finding that balance.
Enjoying the journey, not just fixated on the destination.
And one more thing about live that Adachi emphasizes. It's okay to care. Embrace your emotions. Let them guide you.
I needed to hear that. It's so easy to get caught up in the shoulds and the have-tos. We lose sight of what actually makes us, excited about life.
It's about connecting with that authentic self and letting it guide you, not the other way around.
Okay, so we've got prepare and live down. Now let's talk about adjust, that third side of the plan pyramid. Because life is messy, plans change. That's just how it is.
Totally agree. And Adachi has this hilarious but so true concept. Big black trash bag energy. It's that feeling of, I just got to throw everything out and start over.
Oh my gosh, I know that feeling. Laundry piled up, dishes in the sink, to-do list a mile long. I just want to chuck it all and run away to a deserted island.
Right. We've all been there. But Adachi explains why that doesn't work, really. It feeds this cycle of discontent, this idea that we just get rid of it all, we'll suddenly have perfect control.
So no quick fixes, no drastic overhauls.
Not really. It's about small steps, she calls it, going for the long haul, not an overhaul. Consistent, small adjustments are way more sustainable than trying to change everything at once.
It makes sense, like building a habit, right? Small changes stick better than a complete life makeover overnight.
Exactly. It's about those small wins adding up over time. And another important thing about adjust, that wasn't forever. We put so much pressure on ourselves to make decisions that'll last forever. But Adachi says it's okay to make choices that work for this moment, even if they don't fit the long-term plan.
Wow, that takes the pressure off. I don't need to have it all figured out right now.
And finally, she says, you're allowed to change your mind. We feel so guilty about changing course, but it's okay to be flexible, to adapt.
It's like permission to evolve, right? Our plans can change as we change.
Absolutely. So now let's move to that last side of the plan pyramid. Notice. This one brings it all back to that foundation, what matters most.
It's like tuning into what's actually happening right now and seeing how our values, our priorities are actually showing up or not showing up in our day-to-day.
And doing that with kindness, with compassion for ourselves, not beating ourselves up for not being perfect, but just observing.
Oh, that's so important. I'm my own worst critic, always judging myself for not measuring up. But Adachi's way, it's gentler, more sustainable.
She talks about being a swooper, someone who always jumps in to fix things, control situations, and she had to learn when to step back, when to just observe.
I get that, especially as a parent. It's so tempting to try and manage my kids' experiences all the time. But sometimes the best thing is to just be there, listen, not try to fix everything.
Exactly. It's about being present, not just a problem solver. And this leads to another key part of notice. Staying grounded is better than staying on task. Sometimes our well-being has got to come first, even with deadlines and to-do lists.
So it's okay to step away, take a break when we're feeling overwhelmed.
Absolutely. Our bodies are smart. They'll tell us when we need rest, need to recharge.
Gotta listen to those internal cues, not push ourselves to burnout.
And lastly, Adachi reminds us, good is here, right now. Find things to appreciate even in tough times. Cultivate gratitude.
So easy to focus on what's wrong, what's missing. But shifting that perspective, seeing the good even in small things, that can make a huge difference.
So true. It's about finding those little bright spots. Now, this leads us to what Adachi calls beyond the basics. It's where she gets into some deeper stuff about time management, especially for women.
Yeah, this is where she talks about the menstrual cycle, managing energy, embracing our whole selves, right?
Exactly. These are things we don't usually hear about in time management books, but they're super important for how we actually live our lives.
The menstrual cycle one, that's really interesting to me. I've never thought about that in relation to time management.
It's fascinating. Adachi explained how our hormones, those ups and downs throughout the month, can totally affect how we plan, how we make decisions.
Does that only apply if you have a typical cycle, though? What about women on birth control going through perimenopause or who have irregular cycles?
Well, the specific phases and energy levels might be different for everyone. But the idea that our bodies have rhythms, even if they're not perfectly predictable, that applies to all of us.
So it's about tuning in to your individual rhythm, however it shows up.
Exactly. Adachi gives specific advice for each cycle phase. But even without that, the point is, our energy, our mental clarity, it naturally changes throughout the month.
Instead of beating ourselves up for having off days, we can learn to anticipate those changes.
Exactly. Work with your body, not against it. And that lends into managing energy, not just time.
So not just about how many hours are in a day, but how we're using those hours based on how we're feeling.
Yes. Adachi gives some great tips for dealing with overwhelm and adjusting expectations.
So if I'm feeling drained, it's okay to cut back on the to-do list, prioritize rest, even if I have to push things back.
Exactly. You're not a machine. Your energy levels are going to fluctuate.
This is so liberating, you know? It takes the pressure off having to be on all the time.
It's about being realistic and kind to yourself.
Okay, so we've talked about the cycle and managing energy. What else does Adachi cover in this Beyond the Basics section?
Well, she talks about bringing your whole self to the table, recognizing that our personality, our mental health, what's going on in our lives, it all affects how we handle time.
It's a reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right. What works for one person might not work for another. Even our personality plays a role, you
Yeah,
know? Like someone who's more introverted might need more downtime than someone who's extroverted.
that makes sense. And she talks about how mental health challenges can make it harder to manage time, too.
It's about being aware of those things, being kind to ourselves, and acknowledging our limitations.
Okay, so now I'm really interested in those practical tools for decision-making that Adachi talks about, especially the brain dumps. They sound like a great way to declutter when my mind's racing.
Brain dumps are amazing. It's like a mental detox. You just
Yeah.
grab a pen and paper or open a document on your computer and write down everything that's in your head. No filter.
Just let it all out, no organizing or editing.
Exactly. Just get it all out there. Don't overthink it.
It sounds almost therapeutic, like a brain cleanse.
It can be. Then, once it's all out, you can start categorizing and prioritizing. Adachi uses lazy and genius to help with this part.
Lazy genius categorization? Okay, I'm intrigued. How does that work?
It's about recognizing that we can't do everything with the same energy,
Yeah.
right? Genius items are the ones that align with your core values, your top priorities. Those are the things you want to put your best effort into. No compromise.
So for me, that might be spending quality time with my family, writing, or volunteering for a cause I care about.
Exactly. Those are your genius items. And then there are the lazy items, things that still need to get done, but they don't need all that energy. Those are the ones where you can be efficient, simplify, delegate, whatever works.
Like, instead of making fancy dinners every night, maybe I meal prep or use a meal delivery service. That way, I have more time and energy for my genius stuff.
Exactly. It's about making those other tasks easier so you can focus on what matters most.
This is brilliant. I don't have to be amazing at everything. What a relief.
Right, it's about choosing where you want to excel. And once you've got your brain dump categorized, you can make a realistic to-do list. Adachi has a bunch of helpful frameworks for organizing and prioritizing, too.
Okay, I need those. I'm always struggling with my to-do list. It just feels overwhelming.
One she suggests is now, soon, later, never mind.
Mm.
It's all about urgency. Now stuff is the most pressing, never mind. Stuff can wait.
Sorting by urgency and importance. Got it.
She also has what's in the tank, which is organized by your energy level. So you think about how much mental and physical energy you have right now, and you match the tasks to that, you know?
Like if I'm feeling drained, I'll do some low energy tasks like emails or laundry, not try to write a blog post or make a big decision.
Exactly. Be mindful of your energy, make choices that support you.
These frameworks are so helpful, way more realistic than just writing down a giant list and trying to power through it.
They're designed to help you actually get things done in the way that works for you. Oh, and there are a couple more frameworks that Adachi mentions. There's All Together Now, which is about grouping similar tasks together to be more efficient.
So if I have a bunch of phone calls to make, I'd block off time to do them all at once instead of spreading them out throughout the day.
Right. Streamline your workflow, less context switching. And then there's Pick One, which is about, choosing tasks with humanity.
Pick one. That sounds interesting. Tell me more.
It's about remembering that we're not robots. We need flexibility and choice. So instead of trying to conquer a massive to-do list, just pick one thing that feels manageable and meaningful right now.
I love that. It takes the pressure off having to do everything at once.
It's about letting things flow, being spontaneous, which can actually make you more productive in the long run.
This whole approach to decision-making is just so much kinder than that must-do-everything mindset.
It's about being realistic, compassionate, and remembering that you're a whole person, not just a productivity machine.
Okay, so we've got brain dumps, categorizing to-do list frameworks. Anything else Adachi talks about for managing time like a lazy genius?
Well, she emphasizes breaking big projects down into smaller steps, making them less intimidating.
Making it smaller. I like that, especially when you're facing a project that just feels huge-y.
Totally. Like decluttering your whole house or writing a book, those can feel paralyzing.
Yeah.
But if you break them down into little chunks, it becomes way more manageable.
So true. And what about our someday list? Those dreams we keep putting off. Learning guitar, taking a painting class, that trip to Italy.
Oh, the someday list. We all have one. Adachi actually gives us some questions to ask ourselves about those someday items to figure out if they're really worth pursuing, and if so, how to take action.
I love that she doesn't just ignore those big picture goals.
It's about finding that balance, managing the everyday stuff, and making progress on those things that matter long term.
This whole deep dive into the plan has been amazing. I'm feeling inspired, ready to take control of my time in a way that actually works for me.
It's definitely a different way of thinking about time management.
Ditch the guilt, be kind to yourself, and remember, the goal is to live a fulfilling life, not a perfectly planned one.
So well said. And that brings us to the pep talks we mentioned earlier. Adachi sprinkles these throughout the book, and they're like these little boosts of encouragement from we're feeling overwhelmed, guilty, unmotivated, all those fun things.
I think we could all use a pep talk right about now. One of the things I struggle with most is that feeling of never doing enough, always falling short.
Oh, I hear you. That's so common. Adachi says that guilt often comes from these impossible standards, this idea of perfection that we're supposed to live up to.
I always thought of guilt as a motivator, like it pushes me to do better. But are you saying it can actually hold us back?
It can, absolutely. There's helpful guilt, which motivates positive change. Like if you forget a friend's birthday, it makes you want to make it up to them, be more thoughtful. But then there's unhelpful guilt, which just keeps you stuck in this cycle of shame.
So asking ourselves, have I actually done something wrong? That's key, like Adachi says. If not, let it go. If so, make things right and move on with compassion.
It's about giving ourselves the same grace we'd give a friend who's struggling.
We don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love and acceptance.
Absolutely not. And another pep talk that really resonated with me was when you don't have help, which, let's face it, is a reality for so many women.
I was curious to see how Adachi approached that one, because it isn't really challenging to do everything solo, whether it's by choice or circumstance.
She gets it. She doesn't pretend it's easy. But she encourages us to be proactive about seeking support, even small things.
Like just asking a friend to pick up milk on their way over or venting to a neighbor about a tough day.
Exactly. Those little things can make a huge difference.
It's about reaching out, not trying to do it all alone.
Even a quick coffee date or phone call with a friend can help. Okay, let's talk about the pep talk for when you're not motivated. Because we all have those days where even looking at our to-do list feels exhausting.
Adachi's advice on that one is so simple but brilliant. Sometimes action comes before motivation.
It's a total mind shift, right?
Instead of waiting for inspiration, we just start, even with something tiny. Like, if I don't feel like writing, I'll just open a document and start typing anything, even gibberish. Or if I hate cleaning the kitchen, I'll just load the dishwasher. That's a start.
Exactly. It's about breaking through that resistance, building momentum.
It's like we trick ourselves into getting started.
It can feel that way. You overcome that inertia, and then the motivation often follows.
Okay, last pep talk I want to talk about is when there's too much to do. Because feeling overwhelmed, that's like a universal experience these days.
I agree. It's like we're constantly bombarded with demands and expectations.
And Adachi's advice here is so grounding. Breathe, delegate, and say no. It's about knowing our limits and prioritizing our well-being.
The first one, breathe. That's the one we forget the most, I think. When we're overwhelmed, we panic, try to do everything at once. But just taking a moment to pause, breathe deeply, it helps so much.
It lets you respond thoughtfully, not just react out of stress.
Exactly. And then delegate. Can you share some of those tasks, outsource, or maybe even just get rid of them?
Delegation is hard for control freaks like me, but it really can free up so much time and energy.
And then there's saying no, which can be the hardest of all. Especially for women, we're taught to be people pleasers, put everyone else first.
But learning to say no to things that don't align with our priorities, that's essential.
It's about setting boundaries and knowing we can't do it all.
I love how these pep talks are like these little reminders to be kind to ourselves, seek support, honor our needs.
They're all connected to that bigger message. Embrace integration. Be gentle with yourself. Live a fulfilling life, not a perfectly planned one.
This whole deep dive into the plan has been a total game changer for me. I'm ready to ditch the guilt, be more flexible, and manage my time in a way that actually works for me.
I'm so glad to hear that. That's what it's all about. It's not about reaching some impossible productivity goal. It's about creating a life that reflects your values, your priorities, your own rhythm.
It's about making choices, knowing our limits, and focusing on what truly matters.
And finding joy in the present moment, even when things are busy.
If you're ready to embrace your inner lazy genius, definitely check out Kendra Adachi's The Plan. It's full of practical tips, great insights, and those pep talks we all need sometimes.
It's a great reminder that we can do this. We can manage our time and our lives in a way that feels good.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic.
Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep embracing your lazy genius.
Back again for the deep dive. We're wrapping up with Kendra Adachi's The Plan. Manage your time like a lazy genius. We've talked about ditching that whole greatness trap, building our plan pyramid, even getting in tune with our cycles.
Right, and getting practical too. Brain dumps, lazy genius categories, to-do lists that actually work for us.
But even with all that, sometimes those feelings still sneak up on you. Overwhelm, guilt, zero motivation, it happens.
That's when those pep talks Adachi gives really come in handy. They're sprinkled throughout the book like these little reminders.
Oh yeah, those. They're great. I think the one that hits home the hardest is about guilt, Feeling like you're never doing enough, always letting someone down.
That feeling of constantly failing some invisible test, right? And Adachi says it so perfectly. It's about those impossible standards, this idea that we're supposed to be perfect.
I always thought guilt was a good thing, though. Like, it pushes you to be better, to improve. Are you saying it can actually be bad?
It can be, yeah. There's helpful guilt, the kind that motivates positive change. Like forgetting a friend's birthday makes you want to be more thoughtful in the future. But then there's the kind that just keeps you stuck, Shame, self-criticism, all that.
So, Adachi's question, have I actually done something wrong? That's how we figure it out, right? If not, let it go. If so, fix it and move on.
Give yourself grace, the same kind you'd give a friend who's going through something tough.
It's so true. We're way harder on ourselves than we would be on anyone else.
Another pep talk I loved was when you don't have help. So relevant for a lot of women, I think.
I was really interested in that one, yeah. Doing everything solo, whether you choose to or not, it's hard.
Adachi doesn't sugarcoat it, she gets it. But she says to be proactive about finding support, even if it's small.
Like what kinds of things?
Anything that helps. A friend's grabbing milk on their way over, venting to a neighbor, whatever.
Those little things can really add up, huh?
They can make a huge difference in how you feel overall.
So it's about reaching out, even if it feels awkward. We don't have to do everything by ourselves.
Even a quick coffee with a friend or a phone call, it can help a lot.
Okay, now let's talk about motivation, or lack thereof. We all have those days where even thinking about our to-do list is exhausting.
Oh, yeah, totally. And Adachi has this great idea. Action comes before motivation, sometimes.
Wait, so you're saying we don't have to wait for that magical inspiration to strike?
Not always, no.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to start, even if it's something small.
Like if I don't feel like writing, I just open a blank page and type whatever comes out. Or if the kitchen's a disaster, just loading the dishwasher is a win.
Exactly. You're breaking through the resistance, getting the ball rolling.
It's like tricking yourself into being productive.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But it works. You get moving,
Yeah.
and then the motivation often catches up.
Okay, last pep talk. When there's too much to do, I think we've all been there. That feeling of being totally swamped.
Overwhelm was the name of the game these days, right?
And Adachi's advice is so simple, but so good. Breathe, delegate, and say no. It's about knowing your limits, putting your well-being first.
That first step, breathe, we forget that one all the time. When we're overwhelmed, we just want to fix everything. But just pausing, taking a breath, it can change everything.
It's like you're hitting the reset button, right?
Yeah, exactly. You get out of panic mode and can actually think clearly.
Yeah.
And then delegate if you can.
Yeah.
Can someone else do it? Can you hire it out? Or maybe just not do it at all?
Oh, the not doing it at all part, that's hard for me. But I'm working on it.
It's a process. And then the hardest one for many of us, saying no. We're so used to pleasing everyone, putting others' needs first.
But saying no to things that drain you, that don't fit your priorities, that's so important.
It's about protecting your time and energy, setting boundaries.
I love how these pep talks are like little nuggets of wisdom, you know? Reminders to be kind to ourselves, ask for help, and know when to say no.
They all go back to Adachi's main message. Embrace integration, be gentle with yourself, and live a fulfilling life, not a perfectly planned one.
This whole deep dive into the plan has been incredible. I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for managing my time and my life.
I'm so happy to hear that. That's what we hope for. It's not about being a productivity robot. It's about creating a life that feels good, that reflects who you are.
It's about making conscious choices, knowing your limits, and focusing on what truly matters.
And finding those moments of joy, even when things are crazy.
If you're ready to embrace your lazy genius, definitely check out Kendra Adachi's The Plan. It's packed with practical tips, great insights, and those awesome pep talks we talked about.
It's a great reminder that we can do this. We can find a way to manage our time and our lives in a way that works for us.
Thanks for joining us for the deep dive. We'll see you next time with another fascinating topic.
Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep embracing that lazy genius within.